Mr. Rohit Shenoy, who is the Head of Learning and Development at DXC Technology. Giving a brief, he heads Learning and Development globally for DXC Technology, a Fortune 200 global IT service leader with 130,000 people in 70 plus countries. In a career spanning across to 2 decades, he has worked with various companies like Infosys, Accenture, DDI, and Siemens. His team recently won 2 global Brandon Hall Awards for their high impact work. Please welcome Mr. Rohit with a huge round of applause.
Start with a flashback. 20 years back, it's 5 minutes to midnight, and I am on my desktop furiously clicking next, forward. There is a strange chit in front of me, very cryptic. It says 3A, 4C, 5D, and so on. Those are the answers to compliance e-learning that I've got, and I'm hoping the answers are right. And I need to finish it in 5 minutes, or else what happens? My systems get locked, so next day I can't work. That's my first connect to e-learning about 20 years back. And I'm not thrilled about having e-learning on to the screen here. But what I'm thrilled about is what they just said about the 3 Brandon Hall Awards that my team won for blended learning leadership development initiatives. So I would love to talk more about that, but that's more on the sidelines. It's not exactly the conversation, the topic of our conversation today. So what are we going to talk about today? We'll talk about how corporate learning has evolved. I'm zooming out and then zooming in. I'm not sticking to the topic like you would have seen. E-learning is not my favorite topics. So I'm not completely sticking to that. So I'm going to zoom out and then we'll zoom in on some aspects of the program, of the topic as well. We've all heard about learning in the flow of work. The latest that Josh Person and team has come up with is growth in the flow of work. And that's an awesome research. How many of us have gone through that? Wonderful. So I can see Chetna and a few others have gone through this. So we'll see a little bit about growth in the flow of work and how can that impact our work. We'll look at digital learning providers. We all have them, but what's the landscape like? We look at experimental e-learning tools and gamification and the future of learning. There's very small text below this, which my Marcom team also wants us to put, and I wanted to put that personally as well, which is a disclaimer. I'm not endorsing any of the tools that are there. I don't own any of the content. This is all for us for learning, and I'm not endorsing any of the tools as well. Some of them I've used, some of them I've not used, and it's all for non-commercial purposes. So we all started off with learning. Wherever we were, we got started off with learning, and the conversations were all about transfer of learning, how do we learn, and so on. Then slowly, a few years back, the conversation was on skill taxonomies. So we looked at how do we have skill taxonomies, how do we have build capabilities, about mentorship, and so on. Slowly, it started getting into organization capabilities. How do we build organization capabilities? And that we would do more through on-the-job training, then mentored projects, and so on. And finally, we moved into capabilities, where we looked at how do we generate organization capabilities. And that is very different from learning. For example, when you talk about agile, it's after action reviews that you're looking at, and that's where learning comes in. People look back at why did we fail and what can we do differently, and that's building the capability of the organization. That's not traditionally what we would do in learning. That's not e-learning, that's nothing, but that creates the maximum impact. So along with all the learning that we have. So that's about the capability aspect. And now we have a very strange situation where on one hand, there is a fear of recession, and the other hand, there's also the great resignation, which is still there at the same time. So everybody wants growth and within a short time. So how can we have growth? So we are not looking at just learning, but how does it translate into growth for the individual first and then for the organization? So we are in this phase. Our role is not from a chief learning officer, but it is a chief capability officer and a chief growth officer, growth for the individuals. And therefore, our conversation on technology has also changed. So we're looking at talent marketplace. How can we fill in learning which will get people onto the new roles that they can get into? How can they take safe projects and get onto project-based learning? So that's what we are now talking about. So the role has, from a silo of only being in learning, Now I need to talk to TA. I need to talk to other HR business partners and work very closely with them. Work with business so that growth can be enabled and so on. So we need to get out of our comfort zone onto this. So how has the corporate learning ecosystem evolved as a result of that? I would strongly recommend that you go through this research. We've seen till 2022, and then we have the next step which is coming in. So we moved from that dreaded e-learning only zone that we had and the example that I gave to more of talent-driven learning, to more of digital, and then to learning to the flow of work, and now it is on the growth phase. So the philosophies that we use also change. Nowhere am I telling that what was previous was outdated and not there. If you look at it, all of us are in all of these zones. We look at, still look at e-learning. We are somewhere a little bit on the flow of work, and some of us are also looking at the growth aspects and so on. So nowhere is any of this redundant. It's all there. We need to use all of these at the right blend. So that's the role that we need to take. Am I coming in between the slides? So I'll move closer and away from the screen as well. So I know none of us can read this. We don't have supervision to read this, but this is just a menu to show what all we have as learning professionals to impact. And we're using some of this. When I saw this for the first time, I said, oh God, this is something that we've never used. This is something that we've overused, and so on. And different horses for different courses, as they say. For different parts of the organization, different parts of this will work. And some of these are very new, some of these are outdated, some of these are blended in new ways for us to use. All of them are not equally effective. What really impacts the business? So there's a menu that we have here, which is how much each one impacts the business and what difference does it create. For example, an interesting insight here is coaching, when you get external coaches, even for senior leaders, is not effective as teaching leaders how to coach. So that's where we need to invest our time more on. Anything that you do in careers is very valuable. That's what, again, this research says. And on L&D capabilities of our own teams, how do we build the capabilities of our own teams? It says research with various technologies. It says take chances, fail, but try new things in technology. Don't stick to something, but try new things. That has a big impact. So I would strongly urge you to look at this. It's path-breaking, and we can add a lot of business value through this. So coming back to ground zero and where we are right now, most of us, and the topic as well, is self-paced learning is here to stay. And after the pandemic, you saw all of us as learning professionals, our role really enhanced, and we were more in demand, especially when March 18, 2020, everybody came running to learning. Logon ko engage kare, kya karenge? People are there everywhere, locations. How do you get them to learn? People are also very eager to learn, and so on. So then it's been a great journey. But self-paced learning really, cost is one of the main factors why each one of us, we have to agree to that, goes in for self-paced learning. There's a need to balance reach with the depth of learning. For example, in our organization, 130,000 people spread across 70 countries. I have a very small learning team in comparison to the size of this organization. So we can't have in-depth learning journeys for everyone. There is a need for being very pragmatic, and a lot of connect is only through online tools. But there's these special pools of people, and it might not be high up in the organization. Some of these pools might be very in the middle or even at the entry level. But we need specific learning journeys for them to equip them to enable business. So that's where we go in for in-depth learning journeys, where we partner with the business. So there is a need to balance that reach and depth, and the 3 Brandon Awards that we won are also all in the same example, where we work with the business on specific learning journeys. Not everyone gets that experience, but it's required for certain groups. For example, we do it for diversity, we do it for account leaders, which actually bring in the revenue and manage the customers, and for our entry level, which is a huge pool, which helps improve the pyramid. So these are 3 areas that we focus on more. The learning culture can and definitely influence this. I'm not going to detail of that, but what we can do to enable, and someone asked this question, how can we get the pull? And that's from the learning culture, which is getting leaders. If people see that leaders are learning, if they are also very active on your learning system, if they are doing social learning and posting, and you can follow SMEs, you can follow leaders, you can follow what they are learning. All of that helps you to increase acceptance on your digital culture. And of course, the learning experience matters quite a bit. What really differentiates us is the application of psychology and understanding of human behavior, behavioral economics, using nudges and all of that into our everyday work. Otherwise, we don't have a differentiator when it comes to really adapting of learning. So with that, let's come on to digital learning providers. Everything has been said by Suresh in the previous conversation. So what I'll talk to you about is our experience of re-looking at our entire learning ecosystem. So this is a journey which has taken us about 8-9 months. It's been tougher than, for me, it's been very tough to understand so much of these technology terms, and I'm more like an IT guy now with this implementation. So 18 companies that we evaluated, there was this entire list of LXPs, LMSs and content platforms. They will sell you the moon, saying we can do everything, we can integrate very well, but when it comes to practical aspects is when you see there's so much work to be done on the integration. This is a slightly older slide, so we'll see some of these are nowhere there in the market, but that reinforces the message that I want to give, that there is a lot of shake-up happening in the market, and there have been acquisitions and takeovers and so on. So you have these LMS platforms. We need them to be the bean counter, to look at what learning has been done, and which integrates with our data lake and then gives us the analytics. You definitely need them. You can't do away with it. They are old-fashioned, all of them, and they are not great learning experience. So we have this learning experience platforms, Degreed, Edcast, and so on, Percipio, and so on. Then we have the massive content providers, Udemy, Coursera, Edcast, and all of them. And then we have these traditional huge content libraries. Now, each one of these have been bought over, taken over by other companies. And even after this slide was created, Edcast was then bought over by Cornerstone. SumTotal was bought over by Cornerstone, and so on. So why is this important? When we make a decision, we need to look at these relationships, because systems, while they promise that the systems will talk very seamlessly to each other, it is not the case. There's a lot of work that you need to do to integrate these systems to work with each other. I'm going a little fast, and we'll take any questions during the Q&A. So the first level is of content, which is e-learning. The second level is behavior, how we build skills and behavior, and that needs experiential learning. And without experiential learning, you can't really build skills. It's like you are assuming that a person goes through a one-day course in swimming, doesn't practice at all, and day after tomorrow wins the Olympics. Not possible. You have to have a lot of practice that's there. So that's where experiential learning and practice and simulations and all of that come over. I'll give you one example of this tool that I went through. We've not used them yet, but this is one called Merson. How many of you have heard of this? You might, yeah. So what was amazing is I went through the demo of this tool. So we built all the knowledge, but where the gap is in practice and feedback. So this has, I went and talked to this avatar online, and it was on diversity and how we talk to people who have, so the characters are someone who is two generations, a multi-generational force, women and so on. And so many hidden biases come up after the session. So you're talking to them and they respond back, and their scoring is going on the back end, and this is as human as it can get, but it's not really human. It's an avatar that's at the background. And very subtly, all these cues are taken, and then I get a report on my behavior. So there's a lot of food for reflection, saying, and aha moment, saying, is it really me? Did I really say that? I thought I'm a very sensitive, very empathetic person, but this is how it looks like. Then we have these simulations. A lot of organizations are in this space, about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. You go into a simulation. You would have seen this. This is someone called company called Nolscape, and they do very in-depth kind of simulations here. And they are humans who also kind of take sessions on it later on. I found this one very cool, which is on a very specific use case on developing communication skills. Imagine you have 5,000-6,000 people who are coming in from campus, have a lot of communication skill gap, but you can take sessions for them, but how do you constantly improve them? So this has kind of has the best of the virtual and the physical world. So you're given a personal coach. The coach does not interact with you on voice. They give you assignments, personalized. You upload your voice clips and so on, and then after a week the coach talks to you, or after a fortnight the coach talks to you. So it's best of virtual and physical, and helps to reduce the cost as well. This is someone I personally know and quite love the innovation that they bring in. They have the same game in physical as well as digital. So digital kind of world, and they've now come up with we can create games. So you can create games in a matter of minutes for your context using this platform. So you don't need to pay huge amounts or take a long time to do that. So this is one more. I'm not endorsing any of this. I'm just saying that there's so many of these tools that are now available. We can get into the bells and whistles and get lost in it. The key point here is meet the business where it is. Look at progress before you perfect. Look at pilots before you do large rollouts. Test the success, see how it's working for you, and then go in for it. For this presentation, while I was coming in a long commute, 1 hour commute, how many of you know that your Microsoft PowerPoint has this tool? Any of you knew? Oh my God, this is quite interesting. It's great. So Microsoft PowerPoint, while you are commuting today, just open any PowerPoint, and there is one tool which says rehearse your pitch. So you click on the rehearse your pitch, and you talk to the phone, and you change your slides, and it tells you, gives you a detailed report. And while you're talking, it said, like I'm using fillers. It says, your counter is increasing. Then it says, not inclusive language. Then it says, you can change your pace, you can change your pitch. So while I was doing that, I was learning on the way. 1 hour is when I was kind of practicing this pitch. I didn't get it right, but this is something that we can all use. It's free, all of us have it. We can use it in our organizations as well. So this is called the Presenter Mobile Coach Pitch, free for all of us who have Microsoft PowerPoint to use. I would never have thought that I would talk about PowerPoint as a coach for any of us. So we talked about 2 layers. The first one is on building skills, and e-learning is the solution. Second one is first one is on building knowledge. E-learning is the solution. Second one is building skills. Simulation as a solution. The third one is mindsets. So when you want to change mindsets, which is so much a necessity in organization, and for ensuring wellness of our people, what do you do? So that's where coaching comes in, but coaching is expensive. So how do you coach at scale? So one of the folks who have kind of got it right, if they get the rates right, is the commercials right, is Better Up, and they're doing so well. They hired Prince Harry as their chief wellness officer, and we're using them for one of our learning journeys. And I quite like the insights which says without breaching coach confidentiality, the tool tells you what topics are people talking about, and what has been the change or shift in each of the behaviors. What we get at an aggregate level for the organization is key insights for us as to what leaders should focus on. For example, one of the things that came across is people in one of the groups is that people are eager to innovate, and they think they are more innovative than their managers, but they don't see that support. So when the managers saw that data and were we practical ones, they were like, what can I do differently? And they were not aware of that at all. So that's about coaching at scale as well. Let's look at, so all of this, there's one common point, which is there is data-driven learning in all of it. They are very insightful reports that we have. With all of this, it's not sufficient to have all of this. All of this needs to be on an engaging platform. Where does it all sit? Where do people actually access it? And and our learning management systems don't cut it. So therefore, we need learning experience platforms which can easily help create that learning. So Suresh was talking about those 400 odd learning that are created. How can you equip managers to and SMEs to put that learning online? Thank you so much for that. So that's where learning experience platforms help. So you have the data layer, which is the backend and the LMS. You have the course layer, which is where your content repositories come in, and then you have the experience layer, which is the learning experience platform. That's where all of these tools come in. These tools again promise the moon, but you have to really look at which features you use. How do you enable your leaders, your subject matter experts to really use them? So what we are doing is forming communities of facilitators, forming communities of subject matter experts. We are training them so that they can reach more and more people. So it's like a YouTube internally within the organization, but integrated to our LMS, and every action is of the employee is tracked. So to conclude, we've got experiential learning, we've got personalized learning, we've got self-paced, we've got network, learning from others, learning from peers, and all of that. So the future of it is blending all of it. So the learning journeys that I talked about, which we won the Brandon Hall, all of them had this feature. This is not ours. This is a dummy one that I got from the net, but the secret is in the blend. How do you blend all of these elements together to create that business impact and getting the business angle into it? For example, we have projects after each of this learning that happens, and those are very specifically chosen by the business for impact. And leaders have to pitch that back to their leaders so that they can be recognized. So the challenging is figuring out the right recipe. So with that, let's continue our journey from learning towards growth, and that's the message that I had. Thank you. So open to any questions. I think
Thank
I have
you,
minus
sir.
30 seconds for questions. Right?
We can take one or two questions, sir. Yeah, Mike, please.
Can I have some water, please? Water. Sorry.
Part of DXC. I started my career
Oh,
in the
wonderful.
corporate world with the DXC, right? And I know
Great.
that DXC is moved into virtual first.
Yeah.
So do you think that blended or self-paced and everything through virtual first, where you're not having any kind of a personal touch, uh, actually works? Because what I know and from my experience,
Yeah.
it is always the more you give, right? One, definitely, you also spoke about great resignation that is happening. So one, how in
Yeah.
DXC you are managing the attrition that is happening. Second, do you really think that going virtual completely is going to help the L&D in the coming future?
Yeah. Great question. Thank you. And I personally connect to that. I work virtually. My team is global. I lead L&D globally, and this is the most overdressed I have been in the last 7, 8 months. And I'm not used to seeing real people like this that I'm talking to. I see them through square. I'm surprised seeing people not in squares right now. And we've done all this impact completely virtually that we're talking about. We definitely can't reach entire masses through this, and it is very difficult to do that. But you need to identify which are those segments which are most critical for you. And the real difference has been where we've used virtual, but we've had a lot of leader engagement. We've not people coming in smaller groups, the human connect being there, and so on. And we've tried getting people together in this format as well in between, so that they can connect with each other. Right now, people love being in classrooms after the virtual thing. So a combination of both, I think, is where we'll finally land in. Virtual definitely works. So, for example, 15 days back, there was the entire team was in Poland. I was here, and my colleague was in Slovakia, and then we were delivering a program. We got, and we are on the screen, and everyone is in a room like this, and they had to put speakers and so on. So it's a truly hybrid program, and that was very effective. Even I was surprised about the impact, the effectiveness of that we got. But people felt that we are with them. It does help that we met some of them. If the entire audience was someone we didn't even know or had not connected at all, it might have been difficult. But I think virtual does not reduce if you do it right, does not reduce the impact of learning. It is great for L&D, it reduces cost significantly, it can help you experiment much more. It cannot help you reach every single person the same way that you would in a physical setting, but you need to therefore prioritize and identify groups of people that you really want to make an impact. So long question, long answer, but I hope I've responded a little bit.